Welcome to Sydney, Dr.
Thank
Suzuki.
you. It's always great to be here.
Lovely to meet you. In your book, Wisdom of the Elders, you outlined the many ways that First Nations people around the world have persisted to conserve their environmental values, despite that attempts in that being discredited. Do you see a change in the world in that being more valued, Indigenous knowledge?
All across Canada, and I'm sure in many other parts of the world, the environmental movement is now being driven or led by the Indigenous people. And the reason, I think, is that we've got a real crisis now, that the dominant societies around the world are driven by an agenda, basically the global economy, that they're trying to feed at all expense. And meanwhile, we're destroying the very underpinnings of life on Earth. We use the air, the water, the soil as a garbage can. We're depleting the variety of life on Earth that is the source of clean air, clean water, clean soil. And now we've got a real crunch coming. We've added far too much carbon to the atmosphere, and all of the green things in the ocean and on land can't absorb it all. And what we're finding now is Indigenous people are saying, you know, what do you expect? You don't treat Mother Earth in that way. I have a bit of an interesting way of looking at why Indigenous knowledge is so very important. You know, if you follow the studies done with DNA now, we can use DNA and trace the movement of people over time. And all of the trails lead back to Africa 150,000 years ago. That was really our birthplace on the Great Plains of Africa. And over time, we began to move. Now, we don't know why people moved off the plains. It could be population pressures, could be resource depletion. I happen to think it's probably young teenage males looking for action with the Neanderthal chicks on the other side of the mountain. But for whatever purpose, we began to move. And as we moved off the plains of Africa that were our home, we moved into new territory. We were an invasive species. We didn't know how these new ecosystems worked, but we saw, wow, those birds don't have any wings. Bang, we got them, and we began to take whatever was in this new area, and sooner or later they had to go, what's going on? There aren't as many animals, or the plants are disappearing. And then they had a choice. They could move on looking for more, or they could stay in one place and say, we got to live in a different way. And I believe that the people who stayed in place were the origins of what we now call Indigenous cultures and knowledge. They were the ones who made mistakes. They suffered failures, they celebrated successes. That became the accumulated knowledge, hard-won information that through their mistakes and successes, they learned how to live in balance. And that knowledge is priceless. It will never be replaced by science because it's thousands of years old and it's based on place. So all over the world, we moved and into new places as an invasive species, and the Indigenous cultures that developed over time were profoundly rooted in place.